Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode number 2 of the Inner Light Mysteries podcast. I'm Jonny and this is
Zsuzsanna.
And we are going to give you guys some really exciting updates, some news, as well as we're going to preview a new video we have coming out called The Occult Secrets of Rome and Florence. And what's really great about living out in Europe full time now is that we can go to all these European cities and we can share the esoteric secrets with all of you. But of course, what Zsuzsanna and I want to do is we also want to let you guys know what is the most economic or comfortable way that you can visit these places. You know, we have traveled extensively and we still do lead tours to all over the world. However, what we want to do is we want to give you guys tips on, where's the best place to eat? What are the best cities where you can get certain dishes or cultural traditions, the ways to really immerse yourself into the culture. I don't know about you, Zsuzsanna, but I really believe that part of learning the histories and the secrets to these places is to also feel the energy that's imbued into them. Do you find that the food and the culture is just as important as the books and history?
Absolutely, I totally agree. And this is the way how you can know and how you can know better other countries, other cultures, and this is always a very good opportunity to get to know yourself much better.
Yeah, and sometimes you have to get food poisoning in certain places to really learn how to really get along in those places. It's one of our inside jokes, that we've been to a couple places where that may have been the case.
It's a relationship building thing.
It certainly is when you stay in a place and you happen to eat the wrong dish. But I will say this, that there are so many wonderful experiences to be had in the world. And I know things are changing a lot in the world also. We get a lot of questions from people right now about traveling right now with the certain requirements they give you. And there's a lot of really easy ways to travel at the moment to make your life effortless when you're traveling to certain destinations. Of course, with coronavirus in the world, people have a lot of concerns and a lot of questions about that. What would you say?
Yeah, and I would like to also highlight that we would like to focus a little bit on those hidden secret places which are not so popular in different countries, and just giving you a sneak peek. There are small, really mysterious places in London, for example, connecting to the Masons
And the Templar Knights.
Yes, exactly. So
well, yeah, there's so many of these hidden gems, and we want to focus in on that for sure. But of course, we mentioned that we have some exciting announcements. So since we last did this show with all of you, the Inner Light Mysteries podcast, I was contacted by producer Race Hobbs, and he and I have talked before, and he said, I want you to come over with Jimmy Church over to this new network, the UnX or Unexplained Network, and it's really exciting. There's some great names coming forward on there, some great shows. And so our new show that is going to have this format that all of you have been listening to, we're going to talk about esoteric travel, ancient mysteries. We're going to bring on different guests that are going to talk about these things, and Zsuzsanna and I are going to have conversations with them. We're going to involve all of you. The new show is airing in November. It's going to be every Thursday following Fade to Black with Jimmy Church, and it will be on at 10 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So you don't want to miss that. It's going to be really exciting. And I also have another big announcement to make with all of you, that the new show we have coming out on Gaia, I'm on there on, it's called Mystery Teachings, and you can catch that starting October 25th. You don't want to miss this. I want to give a big shout out to Emmy award-winning producer and director Sid Goldberg. I worked really hard on the show with him, and there was a great team over there. I also want to give a big shout out to Kirsten Medvedich, and everybody at Gaia is so wonderful. Guys, if you don't have a subscription to Gaia, get one, and I'll put a link below so you can all get a free trial. And really, the content there is so incredible. There's so much spiritual content. You got stuff on the mysteries, you got stuff on ancient history. It doesn't get any better than that. And Zsuzsanna, you've watched a lot of Gaia, right?
Absolutely. And I really love that the things which we know or learned before, you will get information about them from another perspective. And actually, in most of the cases, probably that's the truth. So in your case, the mystery teachings, you will learn a lot about those symbols and symbolism, what you can meet every single day during your daily life. And you will see, what does it mean?
Absolutely. And what I'm really excited about this season of mystery teachings is that you're going to get stuff on there with immortality, decoding esoteric symbolism, quantum spirituality. I did one episode that I put together. The teachings for was on Pythagoras, and I really love how they say Pythagoras out here.
We say Pythagoras.
Pythagoras. And so we definitely went into not only the philosophies and the esoteric teachings of Pythagoras, but many of you may have grown up learning about Pythagoras theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. But really, Pythagoras went into the teachings of music and harmonics, looking at the universe, working and corresponding with these musical aspects, as well as these deeper philosophies. So we also went into the ideas about astrotheology and the solar mysteries, and so many incredible concepts that it has that special Gaia touch on it that is really wonderful. So please do come along on that journey with us and check it out when you get a chance. Also, with the new show that we're doing, the Inner Light Mysteries show that you get here, where we're going to go into a lot of these various concepts with all of you. When you listen to the radio show, Zsuzsanna and I have been putting together a platform that is going to be a very low-cost subscription rate for you to come in there and get exclusive content. And the content that we have in our members area is going to be video content, stuff that we don't normally show the public. We have so many interesting pieces that we get in our travels. We just got back taking a group into Egypt. And when we were there, for example, we were at Hatshepsut's temple, and we want to do an episode with all of you coming up, looking into the mysteries of the stargate, stuff that nobody talks about, stuff that hasn't been revealed. And we got this incredible footage that is not normally accessible to the public, going back in beyond the stargate at Hatshepsut's temple that people don't normally see, where there's a false door to the netters. And I do believe that at one point these were activated. There was a means of activating them, and we will discuss that another time on how, kind of like an Einstein's Rosen bridge, that there was a point A and a point B configured into these various places where these false doors were. But on the wall, it's shocking. No wonder they don't want people to see this. On the wall, there's a cartouche, which is like that oval name tag that you see that the Egyptian royalty had, where it would say, their name on a king's list or on the royals. And the cartouche is just filled with stars. And that indicates that whoever was coming through there was someone from the stars.
Here, there's a stargate. And of course, there's Hatshepsut. And over here, we see it's Menkapan Ra with Tutmos III. And as you go into here, it's very interesting, is that when it leads up to the back of a sacred entrance, there was no doubt at one point a stargate with these great beings would step through. And there's a false door right behind in this giant building here that was no doubt powered up by the pyramid with a solar element. And you can only imagine that these beings would step through here, and there would be great meetings that take place as they'd address the others. And maybe we can get you a closer look at what it looks like. Could you take the video?
Come on.
So this is a cartouche full of stars. I'll give you extra. Okay. Oh, I still can't take pictures. Do you want to cut the video off? I'll take pictures.
Zsuzsanna, do you think it's possible that the Egyptian civilization that was there before, the more enlightened ones and the layers of the dynasties, and then we go back beyond the dynastics, do you think it's possible that they were coming from the stars?
I truly believe in this. Absolutely. And another interesting thing is what we will, I think, what we were talking about is the relation of the Mufkats to the stargates.
Absolutely. The white gold, it's such an important piece of the puzzle and the story that we'll get into with that. So, you know, with that, it's wonderful to be able to move into these areas now and discuss these things. But as I mentioned, we are going to talk a bit about our latest exploration. Many of you may have seen videos I've done in the past on certain cities, you know, looking at the layers of the symbolism, why the cities were chosen. You know, there's certain ley lines, there's certain energy, there's secret societies, there's underground tunnels, there's all sorts of different reasons for this symbolism. And, you know, in some of the legislative buildings, sometimes there's underground passageways where, you know, there have been areas where there has been lodges or temples placed into them. So with that being said, you know, we decided to go into Rome and Florence, and we are going to do a specific series over in Italy, because in Italy, of course, there's so much there. But Zsuzsanna, what do you think as far as the history of those particular places, like the role that Rome played in Europe, or even the Vatican played in Europe? How significant is it?
It's absolutely significant. However, I have to tell you that in my mind, I would split the modern age and the ancient civilizations with Rome, actually, because before Rome, we are talking about, you know, more gods. We are talking about star people. Those people were really connected to the gods, to the stars, to the universe. And then something's changed with Jesus and Peter, and this new era, this new age, and the new Roman Empire was actually, I think so, the beginning of this Christianity, what we have here now. And this is a little bit different from the one which was before during the ancient civilizations.
Absolutely. And you bring up some very good points there. And this is something that we are going to discuss in our upcoming video that we filmed over there in Rome and Florence, is that the secret societies that have existed for some time on this earth that we'll call the artificers, which means mason, you know, like the Dionysian artificers, or as my friend who's a Masonic scholar and professor, Hank Kracher, he and I did a lecture at the Masonic Temple in Los Angeles about the artificers. Well, one of the symbols that you find in the highest ranks of York Rite Masonry, in that area, you find the Red Cross of Constantine up there. They use something called the Chi-Rho or the Chi-Rho cross. It's like a P with an X in it. Now, if any of you have ever seen this in the symbolism for the Orthodox churches, you're told that Constantine looks up into the heavens and he sees this symbol, and it means the Christos, or Christ, and he sees this as the sign to found Christianity. But point in fact that this symbol belongs to the secret societies. It belongs to the artificers, who Masonry believes they inherited it from. That's why they use this symbol, and it's important to them. And it's very important when you look in the papacy, you look at their symbol, they're essentially using this symbol. It's hidden in various ways. It actually goes back 2,500 years prior to Christendom. And it's associated with a secret society that you'll look in Rome called the Collegium Artificam, the College of Artificers. And what's really interesting, if you know what to look for, if you go on Wikipedia and you even look at the founder of Hungary, looking for the Hungarians, this is Istvan the First, right?
Exactly.
If you look at his signature, he actually uses this as his signature because he was a part of the Holy Roman Empire. He was a part of this particular group. And there is a very, very interesting history about who the artificers are. But again, all the early Egyptian kings were called the artificers. This group helped seed a lot of the religions and civilizations on this planet, hence the idea of the phoenix that rises from the ashes. This is the crumbling and falling and resurrecting of civilization. So there's so much there in Rome. But again, another thing that's been pointed out to me is that when we look at the founding of Rome was with Romulus and Remus, right?
Yes, exactly. And there is an interesting story after Arvishura about the foundation of Rome, Romulus and Remus, how it connects to the Hun Alliance, the Hungarians. And I will share this with you too. And just a sneak peek about that in Hungary, we have still a very common feminine name, which called Farkas, meaning wolf.
Exactly. And I want to give people a little background about that. Another family name in Hungary that's very interesting that we'll discuss another time when we get into the esoteric aspects of these areas, as you pointed out, as Toth.
Exactly.
Which we find an Egyptian connection to all of these areas, including up into Transylvania, where there's a Sphinx. However, looking at Romulus and Remus, as Zsuzsanna was mentioning, there's a connection to a wolf. If you ever look at the symbolism, there's one statue there. I believe it's more of an Etruscan sort of origin to it, that you get these sort of medieval statues. There's an idea that these two twin brothers, Romulus and Remus, are suckling off of a she-wolf. And the she-wolf is very important to Rome, or Roma's history in its foundation story. And of course, Rome, absorbed a lot of these ancient gods and goddesses and just kind of, brought them in and, gave them different ideas. But Romulus and Remus, I believe the idea is in the mythology that their father was Mars, the mother was Venus. Is that the idea? And the symbolism we get behind this is very interesting, that there's these two brothers and their divine origins, because I was talking to Daniel Brinkley one day, and here's a guy that, as you all know, he's an NDE survivor. But what people don't know about Daniel, as he's a close friend of mine, is that he's traveled all over the world, has been to just countless countries, had amazing adventures there, skipping in through Syria and taking trains with Zechariah Sitchin and going on crazy adventures. He made me think about something that was very interesting. He said, well, what if you thought of Romulus and Remus as like an adaptation of the Anunnaki brothers and Leo and Anki, right? So a very interesting concept to look at, but let's just take a look now, preview. This is a sneak peek for all of you, sneak peek at our upcoming video. Today I'm in Rome, Italy with Zsuzsanna, and we're here to uncover the esoteric symbolism found at the Vatican. We'll also take a closer look at the secret societies that came from here, who they are today, and how they had a role in seeding Christianity. But of course, the very backstory of Rome has this esoteric occult factor that goes back possibly to the Anunnaki, and it's been called the Eternal City because the ancients believed that no matter what was happening in the world, that Rome would go on forever. When I think of Rome, though, I think of its great emperors that existed. Zsuzsanna, who is your favorite emperor?
Well, it's a hard question because, Nero or Caligula, they gave a lot to Rome. However, they were a little bit of interesting and weird people themselves, right?
Yeah, we've been told that Nero played his fiddle while Rome burned to the ground, and Caligula, he was inviting people over to have sex, and if he didn't like their performance, he threw them out the window.
Yeah, but when we would like to talk about the really glorious times, years, and ages of Rome, we would like to highlight Caesar and Augustus, who gave a lot, not only for Rome, but to the whole world as well. And later we will talk a little bit about Hadrian, and you will see why we'd like to highlight this amazing emperor to you.
Absolutely. There's so much we have to explore today. So, as it's been said by Shakespeare and attributed to Julius Caesar, Veni Vidi Vici. I came, I saw, I conquered, and that's what we are going to do with all of you today. So come along on this adventure with us. So that's us arriving in Rome, first of all. Beautiful place. It's surrounded by incredible ruins and gorgeous architecture. You know, the place is absolutely imbued with this amazing energy. Zsuzsanna, what is your favorite part about being in Rome?
They are the masters of good food, beautiful clothes, and fashion as well. And of course, history everywhere, wherever you just look at or walk.
That's one of her secrets. That's one of the main places that she shops in Europe is in Italy. But I want to say that there's certain things that food-wise are good in Rome, and then there's certain things that get better when you move more northwise or you get out of there, which we'll talk about. But in Rome, they're really famous for their carbonaro. You know, some of the food is kind of hit or miss when you're just walking around the city. But what would you say is a good tip for finding a good restaurant around Rome?
I think that the best places always are in hidden streets, not always in the biggest public places or squares. This is a very important thing to take into account when you would like to pick a good place, or even ask local people where to go, or check it out where local people are sitting more around. Just so in this case, if you want to try something what is really Italian and not for the tourists, you will find the best dishes in these type of small restaurants.
Yeah, you know what? Rome is actually not that bad. If you want to rent a car, you want to drive around, it's good that way. They do have Uber, and you can Uber everywhere you want to go. A lot of European cities still won't allow Uber. For example, Budapest does not have Uber. But, you know, with that, you know, you have a great advantage. There is what, about a 20-minute distance outside of, let's say you go to the Vatican or something, right?
Exactly. And by the way, the public transportation with the metro and underground system is also working very well. So if you would like to stay in the city center, I would recommend to pick a hotel somewhere in the city center, because this way you can always just walk out, use the public transportation, or just walking around, and you can reach out all of the beautiful historical places.
Yeah, and when you're there, you have to try wine. You know, of course, you have to get a good red wine and try in honor of Bacchus, the Lord of the Vineyards, which is very popular over there. But of course, everybody over there, the famous wines are Brunello wine, as well as when you go from there up into Tuscany and other places, they like to talk about Chianti wines, which are very good. But what is the best starter salad dish that you can try that you absolutely have to try when you're there?
What we really like is called caprese, which is made from some salad, but basically tomato and bufala mozzarella. And what we really like to do is to pour a lot of oil and balsamic vinegar on the top.
Yeah, and you can't, this particular type of mozzarella, you can't get it outside of a lot of these European areas. It has to be made fresh. It's almost like a moist sort of mozzarella, and they put it on with the tomatoes and you get it, and it's fantastic. But I will say this, that I find that if you're going to get a pesto-based dish, the pesto-based dishes are not as good, you know, with the pine nuts and all that. They're not as good when you're actually in Rome. They get better when you go out to places like Florence.
So if you're in Italy, don't forget to try these classic Italian amazing foods, just like the caprese, as we mentioned before, or the different types of hams, which called prosciutto cotto or prosciutto crudo. And also don't forget about the pastas or the pizzas, and as a starter, the amazing bruschetta, what they have. And
wait, the bruschetta, when people talk about that, there's different varieties that they serve up, and one's pomodoro, which has the tomato, right?
Yeah, there are different types of bruschettas. It depends on which toppings would you like to get on your bread, actually.
Yeah, so when it comes to spaghetti though, the spaghetti that you get, depending on where you go in Rome, you have these like kind of homemade style where it's a little different than maybe what some people are used to. The noodle might be a little bit thicker, a little bit more what seems to me like uncooked, but it seems like on that level they have the fettuccine. But the macaroni noodle out here, that in America we have macaroni and cheese. You guys don't call it macaroni in Europe, right?
No, macaroni is a totally different type of pasta here in Europe, or especially in Hungary. This is not the classic one, what you call it in America or in Canada. This is a little bit of thicker version of the spaghetti with a hole inside of it.
Yeah, and of course the lasagna is amazing out here. And some of the lasagnas, you'll have either your traditional tomato-based lasagna or you'll have the bechamel, the white sauce included, right?
Yeah, and don't forget about the amazing desserts. For example, the tiramisu and the very, very delicious coffee.
Absolutely. You got to get the coffee. The espresso out here is the way to go. Americano, espresso. But of course, in Italy, it's all about the cappuccino. So definitely amazing.
And what is interesting that, for example, in Rome, you cannot find a Starbucks because they have the Italian coffee. So here is the place where you will definitely try an Italian coffee.
And by the way, when you go into areas like Florence, which we're going to get into in just a moment, the importance of those areas, and we're going to talk about that. When you do go into those areas, it's about 20 euros each way for a toll on the highway, isn't it?
Yes. What is different, I think so, in case of Italy versus other European countries about the tolls in highways, that there are always gates where you have to pull cards. And when you exit off the highway, before that, there are gates where you have to pay for the usage of the highway.
Yeah, what I think everyone will really appreciate about the Italians, if you've never been there, is that just their attention to comfort, their attention to the luxury and the good things of life, the food, the taste, the music, just everything. You feel like when you stay there, it's a next level of care. But speaking of luxury, you know, when you're in Rome, you stay in the hotel, there are these incredible spas, right?
Absolutely. And when you are in Rome, you don't have to forget about the culture of the bath, the Roman bath. And for example, in that hotel where we were, you could find those heated seats made from marble when you are lying down. And it gives a nice warmth to you, relax your muscles, relax your body. And these things also coming from the ancient Rome, because they had the so-called tepidarium, which means a warm place or a warm room in the Roman bath.
Yes, and just like Drake sings about, you can actually have lemon pepper water when you're in the hotels. But when they had these baths, I really reminds me about Bath, England. You know, when they had the hot springs, and that's something that's also very famous.
This is where it comes from.
Yeah, just like in Budapest and around Hungary, you had the warm water empire, right?
Exactly. And Hungary is very, very famous about its thermal sources and thermal baths. So if you are in Europe, I highly recommend you to visit Hungary and visit the thermal baths here.
Yeah, it's interesting because if my memory serves me right, when I think about Bath, England, even before the aristocracy in the Georgian times, you know, the kings and all that, I think the original story was that King Lear, he was wandering around with leprosy, and he had actually found one of these baths, and the mineral waters that he was in, you know, all the minerals that are in there actually cured his condition. And so that's how it became very famous moving forward. And then, you know, it became a place of this great renown with soul, and they connected to the Roman gods and everything. But yeah, it's absolutely amazing that when you were showing me that here, that even that tradition is here to this day. But now it's all heated, not, you know, through probably electrical means or whatever they use. But how did they heat that in the old days in Rome when you would go lay down in those areas? How did they heat that?
maybe stones or maybe fires as well, but what I think is very important is that they were using it not only for cleaning themselves or washing, but they also used it for healing, for therapeutic reasons. And the third thing why they used this was also a place to meet.
So as far as traveling right now to Italy goes, the experience that we've had in European areas, or even coming here, for example, is that there's no more border patrol. Like, you just don't see that anymore when you come off into an airport in Europe. As soon as you land, you literally get your luggage and you walk out of there and you go. And, you know, there's very much like a loose mask policy, but you're not getting carded for vaccines and stuff like that wherever you go. Obviously, that's a big debate people have right now in the world. Then there's all kinds of changes happening with travel and everything. However, what appears to be the case is that it's up to the airlines now. The only time you're going to get really carded or checked is the person at the check-in at the airport when you're leaving home. It's up to them to check to make sure you have everything aligned. And as long as that's all good, you get to land and go into the places where you're headed. You know, I've talked to Jay Widener about this before, that the way of the world is going all biometrics and biosynthetics anyway. So wherever you go in the future, it's going to be just biometric face scans and you just walk out wherever you're going. And that's kind of the way things are headed as far as travel. But it really isn't as bad as people think. It's very smooth. And one thing I do want to say is that the PCR tests in Europe, when you get here, they're a lot cheaper than, let's say, in Canada and America. I found on average that PCR tests were going up to $250 to $300 in that end. And don't get me started about the PCR tests around London. London now has, and in the UK, where we just got back from, we did a lot of work over on re-examining Anne Boleyn and the Tudors, Hampton Court. We have some stuff coming out on the Tudor dynasty and the esoteric connections over there. But with that, they have now said that they're abolishing the testing for coming into the UK, which is great news, because it was getting very expensive for travelers wanting to go in there. So with that being said, Italy was a real pleasure. The people were very nice. And I would say, for the most part, even though they still had masks indoors, almost everybody is wearing their mask right around here. So it's very funny. Even the guy enforcing the mask is wearing his mask right around here. So as soon as you get out of that North American perimeter, it's like it doesn't really happen to be an issue. You know, in Hungary, they don't wear masks anymore either. They don't talk about it, right? Like, anywhere you go, it doesn't happen. Same with the UK.
Yes.
Are you happy about that? So anyhow, with that being said, it's nice to see these things open up again. I'm very excited because we need to be in touch with our history. We need to be in touch with our roots. And it's nice to see these historical sites opening back up again and getting a lot of visitors. And that is very encouraging. And I love that.
And speaking about a lot of tourists and visitors, I highly recommend you to book tickets online before entrancing, for example, to the Vatican Museum where we were, or other places as well, because there's a huge lineup outside, and this way you can be sure that you will be entered for sure.
Now let's take another look at a clip of Zsuzsanna showing us a very special place that is connected to Zsuzsanna, and we are looking at the Pantheon here in Rome, and you'll notice that there's an Egyptian obelisk with hieroglyphics coming down that was placed here in honor of Pope Clemens XI. And of course, on that papal seal up there, you'll notice there's sort of a Chi-Rho cross that it makes with the egg, which is probably related to Orpheus at the top, with the keys, which forms sort of a P and an X as well, that we see again and again in this ancient symbolism. And what's very significant about this and the mysteries is that we see this building opening up in that sacred and divine architecture. Zsuzsanna, do you want to take us in there and tell us, what does this mean? What's the story behind this?
Okay, so the Pantheon, the name comes from a two Greek words, actually. The Pan means old, and Theon means God.
Like Theo, the old name for Greek men that was like related to God, like theater or theo.
Exactly. And it's interesting because Michelangelo said that this building was the work of angels and not by the humans. And we also know that this building was built between 27 and 25 BC by Consul Agrippa, who was the consul of Augustus. And unfortunately, after 2 fires, it was ruined and the temple was rebuilt during the age and the emperor of Hadrian. And if you can take a look up there to that writing, it says that Marcus Agrippa, son of Lucius, made when consul for the 3rd time, and it was made there by Hadrian in order to say thanks to Agrippa, who was actually the original builder of this beautiful Pantheon.
Now, isn't there a history associated with Julius Caesar here?
Yes, what we know now, and this is something actually a new information, that not so far from here it says that Julius Caesar was assassinated, and that was the place where we probably all remember this very famous saying, "Et tu mi fili Brute, you to Brutus."
Okay, so Brutus, just so people know, when we see who killed Caesar in the story, this is why we say in our English expressions the terms, "that was brutal." He was being brutal because that's, again, connected to Brutus. But would you be able to just show us what's so significant about this place? If Michelangelo is relating it to angels, could you bring us on a tour?
Absolutely, there are a lot of mysteries inside.
Let's go. Let's take
go
a
and
quick,
check it out.
Let's take a quick look. So, Zsuzsanna, tell us why this place is so significant to you.
As you probably know, and as you could see in this this short clip or video, the Pantheon is the word is coming from the Greek word pan, means all, and theon means gods. And it was built and dreamed by Agrippa, who was the consul of Augustus. And after one legend, Agrippa had a dream, and in his dream there was an angel who told him to build this beautiful temple, the Pantheon. And there is another legend here, what we can talk about. And after this legend, when Romulus died at the Pantheon, an eagle came from the sky and grabbed him and took him to the heaven.
Now, do you think that eagle could be a metaphor for extraterrestrials?
Yes, this is exactly what I'm thinking.
Incredible. You know, that's amazing. When you look at those old stories about like Charles Fort, those Fortean legends of like certain things in antiquities and older times, people would talk about these, like a flying eagle grabbing someone, or you get the story of, let's say, like a Jonah and the whale or something. Sometimes you think, hey, could they be going into something like a ship, you know?
Yeah, but the eagle on itself, it's a very important symbol of Rome, and you
Yes.
can see it a lot of places, and even in the centurios of the old Roman ancient ages, when they actually started to go and conquer all over Europe, all the countries. And for example, here in Hungary, we still have a lot of places and cities which still have the Roman name, and we still have the Roman ruins here in a couple of places.
Yeah, that's fascinating. You see that evidence all over the place. I mean, the Roman Empire was huge.
It's undeniable. It has a huge effect on our modern civilization.
It really is. And something Jordan Maxwell's pointed out to me is that when you go to York, England, for example, and when you're in Yorkshire, you see that not only do they still have that statue of Julius Caesar there, but this is where Rome ruled England. And then when you go and look at America, they call it New York because this is where England ruled America from. And if you look at New York, you have the United Nations there, you know, all the symbolism there, from the Tribeca to, you just look at everything that's there symbolic wise. You could go on and on for hours, but Very, very interesting. Of course, we've also talked about the Statue of Liberty. However, getting back into the fascinating mysteries of Rome, you can't look at those areas without talking about the Vatican. I mean, Vatican City, look at that. This is somewhere that is its own country. Okay. It's like a country within a country. And, look at the incredible power and energy that emanates from there. For centuries, people had to come and kneel before the throne at St. Peter's there. I mean, the Pope, wow, look at the power that's there. Even to this day, it's fascinating. And we did spend, a lot of time decoding the mysteries there, at St. Peter's Basilica. You look over at the statue of St. Peter that people have kissed the feet off of. Well, of course, we know that in the Catholic Encyclopedia, they say right in there that this is actually Jupiter, the ruler of Cassiopeia, Zeus. And it just got rebranded. Look at it's in the different hills of Rome. First of all, it's in Vaticanus Hill. You have the various hills and the symbolism, whether it's Capitolina Hill, Palatine Hill. Well, in Vaticanus, the Vatican name, Vaticanus, literally is like the serpent. And the energetic formations there, what's underneath in the catacombs. In the conversations I've had with Daniel Sheehan, who is a Jesuit trained lawyer, he's confirmed that there are extraterrestrial records and items that are connected to the Vatican Library. So again, we did look at some of the symbolism you find there outside of the incredible Egyptian museum, which we had an incredible time, going through it, right? Seeing all the symbolism there. The outside of the Vatican Library, we have the famous Fontana della Pigna, or the Fountain of the Pine Cone. Here's a little preview of us looking at that. So we're at the Vatican courtyard, and behind me is a very famous fountain many of you may have heard of before, called the Fontana della Pigna, or the Fountain of the Pine Cone. Now, many of you may have heard people talking about the pineal gland and how it relates to the third eye, or even Dr. Rick Strassman's work, where he has linked the idea to how your pineal gland creates dimethyltryptamine, or DMT, which Dr. Rick Strassman calls the spirit molecule, which is a very interesting connection that we have to these esoteric symbols. However, we know that the Pope even has a pine cone at the top of his staff, which is connected to the Bacchanalian mysteries. But if you look at this very interesting fountain here, which right now is not operating because it's under construction, you'll see that on either side of it, we have the two peacocks. Now, the peacocks, according to the Indian traditions, represent immortality. We also relate them to the ibis bird, which we can also connect to Thoth, or Hermes Mercurius Trismegistus. And on either side of it, we have the lions with the Egyptian hieroglyphics, if you want to go up closer. The lion, of course, being relation to, Sekhmet. Sekhmet is a very interesting symbol, which again, we bring the solar or the light aspects into this. But what's really interesting about this is that not only when we look up, do we have the seeking of this with the pine cone or the third eye, but behind this pine cone, we also have an open Egyptian sarcophagi, which is showing us that there is a connection to everlasting life or immortality. Even more interestingly enough, we have the symbolism out here, right behind this, across the way, of what is looking right now like the Earth spinning, which has a representation of an egg, like the Orphic egg, or the mysteries connected to Orpheus. And this is also related to the thalamus. So we have this aspects of this sacred connection to the body, to the mind, the spirit, this transcending life and death in this beautiful symbolism. Check it out.
And after a couple of theories, actually, Peter was the person who brought only a part of the teachings of Jesus to Rome and into the Vatican, and was so-called the founder of the new church, what we call now the Christianity, the church, what we have right now. But after these theories, we also know that the basic and profound teachings of Jesus was connected to Egypt.
Absolutely. Okay, so to bring up Jordan Maxwell again, there's something he said before, and I have a video with him talking about this, like talking about Petra in Jordan, where he would say that Jesus said that he's going to build his rock, his church upon the rock, and he's connected Peter to Petra, and the people that are involved with that came there for a long time with the Nabateans and the Sabbateans, the old Arab astronomers. There's a connection to there that's very interesting, but there is a very interesting connection to that place, which I know you visited. You visited Petra in Jordan. You've been there, the megalithic structures there, and so is Brian Forster, looking at the specifics of those areas. I mean, who gave us that great civilization, and where does that come out of? And when you look even at those books in the Bible, in the New Testament, where we attribute to the teachings of Jesus, like even look at Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and those books, they are actually more ancient and far older than the Old Testament. That's one of the great secrets of the Bible. And so, you look at some of these areas that how they were arranged in those teachings, like as Manly P. Hall is often looked at, the Nicene Church Fathers, when we look at the Ecumenical Council in 325 CE and how they arranged these books of the Bible and put them together, when we see them, we can often say that maybe that these teachings just took like the universal mind and renamed it to Jesus in there. So there's a lot of beautiful ancient truths in there, right?
Yes, absolutely. So there are a lot of mysteries, and especially you feel it in the Vatican, a lot of secrets, hidden secrets over there. So if I could have only one wish in the Vatican, I would like to have an access to the basement of the Vatican and to the library, which is the secret part. What would be yours?
I would definitely say the same thing. It would be to get into the Vatican Library and to get access to those areas. But both of us are huge history fans. So, of course, we love the history. We love the Borgia family history, and seeing, the Borgia apartment, you see where you see the symbolism of the pine cones and the bull. Of course, the pine cone being connected to the Bacchanalian mysteries. And as we've talked about, how there's a pineal gland association with the pine cone. However, as great as all the symbolism around Rome is and how fascinating that is, we also had to head out to Florence.
We're heading now to Firenze, which is a part of a province called Umbria, and we just left Rome, which belongs to Lazio. There are a couple of provinces here and nice areas. So here technically we are very close to Tuscany, and Tuscany is famous about not only about the wine areas, the nice foods, but of course about history. We have here Firenze, we have here Pisa, Siena, a lot of beautiful cities, and it's always worth to visit the small villages here, just like San Gimignano or Volterra.
Yes, it's very exciting. And of course, we have the masterpieces by Michelangelo, like David there, right?
Yes, exactly. So what is interesting that the original statue is in a small museum and not in the Uffizi, as a lot of people think that it is there, but it's in a small street in a small museum. And there is the Piazza da Michelangelo. It's a huge place above Florence or Firenze, and there is a huge statue of David, and we can take a beautiful look around the city from there.
Absolutely. And when we go in there, we're going to look at a few things, like the famous Ponte Vecchio bridge that was used by the Medicis, the banking family, and they had funded all sorts of interesting things, not only to do with alchemy, the esoteric, occult like studies, but you find the Duomo, which is just like the Washington Dome, or why you have domes in certain buildings. It comes back even from Islamic architecture, which is like the dome of the heavens opening up. All kinds of beautiful architectonics and gorgeous, stunning buildings that overwhelm the senses when you're there. And of course, we get all kinds of other interesting stories that relate to the Renaissance period. The art and the statues tell amazing stories that we're going to go take a look at today. So I'm very excited to bring you all out on this adventure that we have you on. Now come along with us and come to Florence. So Florence is an absolutely amazing place. There's so much history there. What's the correct way to say Florence?
Firenze. This is one of our favorite places in Italy.
I love it. And there's so many other wonderful places too. Of course, with Milan, you have the history there with Caterina Sforza, you have the tarot, you go over into Venice.
Yes, this one of my personal favorite is Venice, because everything is so older. Everything is just, if you would go back in time and walking on those streets, it's amazing.
Yeah, and I want to talk about Venice more in a moment in a conversation we had about that. But when you go over to Florence, the thing that you're going to see is not only nearby, you have the Leaning Tower of Pisa, you have these beautiful streets. There's so much rich historicity there. We have, of course, the Medicis there, right?
Yes, absolutely. Just like the Borgias were a very powerful family, the Medicis were the other one who were the founders of the artists at that time, just like Leonardo da Vinci or Michelangelo.
Absolutely. And what's really important there to notice is you see these incredible architectonics. And Zsuzsanna and I, we did some walkarounds, of course, looking at the Duomo, or the dome that's there. And here's a little clip of us looking at that. Can you tell us a little bit about what we're looking at right now behind us?
So right now we are standing at the Piazza del Duomo, and behind me you can see the Duomo di Firenze. This is one of the biggest cathedrals in Italy, and it was built in 1436. And if we take a little bit of deeper look into this beautiful building, you can see a lot of mysteries and symbolism.
Absolutely. And some of the symbolism that I've noticed when looking at it over here, right off the bat, is that we see these classical architectonics that Plotinus and others have talked about. First of all, if you look at the doorway there, we see the triptych arches, and you see the three layers in there. And the three layers of the triptych arches on our classical buildings represent the Trinity, or the morning sun, the midday sun, and the evening sun, or the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. You know, Brahma, Shiva, Vishnu, Osiris, Isis, Horus. And of course, you know, we see the classical sun wheels up there, the depictions that come from the ancient world, which represent the sun. It represents the cycles. The windows that we see the yonis, which of course are the vaginal openings of the procreative powers and nature of the divine. And if you go up further, of course, you're going to see all sorts of different triumphant arches and different areas that have even phallic principles or concepts. But this is all part of these areas of divine architecture. Now, take a walk with us, because we're going to move further over here. We're going to show you some other areas that relate to this sacred architecture as we're moving in through Florence here, which is just an absolutely beautiful area filled with historicity. Zsuzsanna, do you want to say anything about this area? What's so important about this area?
So, as you probably know, this is, as I could say, the heart of art, and the Renaissance and the Italian art. And we can also talk something about the Medicis, right?
Absolutely, and we will visit the Ponte Vecchio Bridge, and we're going to talk about the Medici family and their important role in the Renaissance period. Is there any areas over here that stand out to you? Like, would you say the areas where Michelangelo was, Leonardo da Vinci was? What areas stand out for you?
Yeah, most probably because the Medicis were the mentor of the art and artists at that time. And we know that they founded Da Vinci or Michelangelo as well.
Absolutely, they did. And of course, before we leave this area, we can't leave it without looking up at the dome. Now, when we see this dome, this is very famous, the Domo, and you see a lot of these structures over government buildings and all sorts of areas. We see the importance of them even when you look at the Washington Dome, when you go over to Washington, D.C. This Domo behind us, this is inspired, according to the secret teachings of all ages by Manly P. Hall. It comes back from the Islamic world, which is why you see it on mosques in this sacred architecture. It's the dome of the heavens opening up to remind us of that, bringing heaven onto earth. And again, when we go back into Plotinus, in his essay on the beautiful, he taught that the more beautiful your architecture was, the more beautiful and raised the consciousness of the civilization was. And I just think that that's incredible that even to this day, you come to a place like Florence and you see that the art, the culture, the food, the people have a certain elevated consciousness and feel to the area. But absolutely incredible. Check it out. Looking at that video, I mentioned that the dome comes from the Islamic world, as we see Manly P. Hall mentioning in the secret teachings of all ages. But Zsuzsanna, you mentioned something else to me about the structure.
Yeah, I pointed out, and you can find the same architecture and signs in Siena, in the Dome of Siena. These two colors which are dominating the Duomo di Firenze, the white marble and the greenish, or actually the darker one, and which goes back to this Islamic architecture and design, what you can, for example, find in Granada or in Andalusia, in the southern part of Spain, in the Alhambra.
Yes, and it's very interesting that, again, coming back to Manly P. Hall and something he has said, and I've done a video about this before in Vienna, Österreich, or Austria, of the story of the crescent and how it relates to the croissant. In 1683, when the invaders of the Ottoman Empire came, they were, defeated, so they baked the croissant in that shape. The interesting thing about that is Manly P. Hall says that when we connect the crescent over to Venus, and it's not so much a moon that they use in Islam, that the holy day of Islam is actually Friday, which again in the French we say Vendredi, or Venus Day, and the color always associated with Venus is green, which is the Islamic color, which is why when you go into a lot of these countries, like Islamic countries, especially with Egypt, or you look at certain mosques, that green is a very important color associated with this religion. So again, it's an amazing observation that you made there, putting that together into the architecture. And it just goes to show you that even when we look at places like Spain, that there was an incredible Islamic influence there, which at one point, with the cross of Christianity and all that, brought in such ideas as surgery and other interesting influences that even if you look at the comparisons, even when you look in Spanish, you're going to find a lot of Arabic correlations. So there really is a connection to a lot of our various religions and practices and rituals and traditions that we have to look at and make a good comparison. But with that being in Florence, we mentioned the Medici family, and we did take a look at various places that are very important there, such as the Ponte Vecchio Bridge.
The bridge first appears in the documents in 996, but unfortunately this beautiful bridge was destroyed by a flood in 1117. As you can see here, this is the Arno River under the bridge, and the second time it was also swept away by the flood in 1333, which is an interesting number.
Absolutely, right? You got the 33s.
And what is very exciting about this, that only the central parts of this bridge stayed at the place, The other parts, the left side and the right side, were totally destroyed and falling into the river.
However, what's really interesting about this is that we also have a connection to the Medici family, and the Medici family being the famous banking family here. They were using this during very strenuous times to travel back and forth without being disturbed. And this was like their secret passageway, if you will. And what's really fascinating about them in the Renaissance period and who they funded, they were not only behind the likes of Niccolò Machiavelli, but also Cesare Borgia. The Borgia Pope Alexander VI, as you and I have discussed, you know, he was Pope there from 1492 to 1503 and had a great effect on the Renaissance period. And let's just take a walk while we're talking. But what's really fascinating about this is that not only were they funding alchemy and occult experiments and the incredible work that was being done by Niccolò Machiavelli and the Prince, which all great leaders have used for their guide to rulership and being leaders. You know, he talked about the idea of how you could tell a successful man by who was around him. On asking questions, is it better to be feared or to be loved? It doesn't matter who you've looked at, whether it's a tyrant in history like a Hitler or a George Bush or whoever it was. All these folks had a copy of Niccolò Machiavelli's The Prince on their bookshelves. And again, that was, you know, based on the life of Cesare Borgia. And Cesare Borgia, if many of you are not familiar with the Borgias and who they were, Cesare Borgia was not a choir boy. You know, he killed his own brother. This is a family that was placed into power because of poisonings, because of incredible brilliance and tacticianing. However, when we look at the work of Alexander Dumas said that the great paintings that we had of Jesus, they were all based off of Cesare Borgia from his likeness. That's who everybody has on their wall is Jesus, and that's a very fascinating thing to this day. The Bible actually says in the book of Isaiah that Jesus was an ugly man. He was not a beautiful man. He just had regular looks, except we had this great looking Jesus that came out of this Renaissance period because of this. And it was based off the Borgia family and their influence they had on these things. What else would you say about the influence of the Medicis and these areas, Zsuzsanna? Is there anything that stands out to you?
Yes, besides the fact that they were founding these artists at their time, just the most famous ones, just like Leonardo da Vinci or Michelangelo. You have to also know that they were a merchant family. They're dealing with trading, shippings, and all of these shopping stores, things around here in Italy. And this bridge, this Ponte Vecchio, it was always used for shops, stores, and merchants.
Absolutely. And when you look over at these ancient connections of the world, we see that we have looked at many different connections to these seafaring people that have gone a ways back, and they've been the great bankers of the world and where they've come from. And I've talked about this extensively to Jay Widener, that you see the lights coming out of the ancient world of the Phoenicians, who may have in fact become the Venetians, which we see over here. We see the Vikings, we see the groups that were the Druids, all these groups that came out around the world and expanded out. These are very ancient groups, and their symbolism is there. It's very prominent. Brought religion, science, architecture all over the world. We have these great legends. It's really incredible. But again, Zsuzsanna, as you pointed out, I mean, this is a place of great culture, science, literature, history. It's imbued into the place, and this Ponte Vecchio Bridge is very, very important for the history of the place. Check it out, everyone. You'll notice that we mentioned the Venetians being connected to the Phoenicians and how there could be an ancient group of progenitors on this planet that became our various bankers, and they seeded religions, and certain families could still be related to them. This is very interesting, this concept of there being an ancient group of seafaring people. And we'd like to bring Brian Forster on here to talk to you guys about that concept, and also connecting it to folks that had elongated skulls, which is also a very interesting concept. But of course, the one thing these folks have to try if they're in the area of Florence, they can't leave without trying, is what? Gelato ice cream.
Exactly.
Yeah, you have to try gelato ice cream if you're there.
And I recommend you to try especially the salted pistachio.
Absolutely. Here's one more clip for all of you of some of the art in Florence. So here we are in Florence, in the square, and we find that there's all sorts of incredible statues of beautiful classical art. We have back there Hercules, Perseus with the winged feet, holding the head up of Medusa, and all sorts of incredible art, buildings and structures. Zsuzsanna, what is this building we're looking at right over here?
This is the Palazzo Vecchio, and in 1299, this building was built by the people on the Comuna of Firenze. And right now, you can see only the copy of Michelangelo's David statue, but you have to know that the original one was standing here from 1504 until 1873, and that it was moved to the Galleria dell'Accademia here, the small museum in a really small street here in Firenze. And a very interesting thing here is that this statue was built here and put here in order to defend the civil liberties of the Repubblica di Florence or Firenze. And if you can take a look at the eyes of David, you can see that it is fixed and staring at the direction of Rome, where the Medici family was living.
And we're going to talk about the Medici banking family and why they're so important to these parts and what they funded and what they were a part of. But this incredible area is very important. And if we could just quickly take a look at something, I want to bring everyone over and show them a statue that's very important in its relation to Atlantis. And again, we have the Medici banking family's hand all the way through this on what they funded and what they were part of. If we keep going over here, you're going to notice a very important statue connected to Neptune and connected to Poseidon. And according to the traditions that we have, horses and the breeding of them and these great things came out of Atlantis. So did art and science, culture, literature, everything that came down into our world came from our antediluvian societies and civilizations. Let's take a look a little closer at these amazing, beautiful statues that are there. And of course, we see a very interesting portrayal of this also that's connected when we look over at the Trevi Fountain over in Rome. So Rome, Greece, and the ancient world, no doubt, paid tribute through their art, of course in the Renaissance period and otherwise, to our ancient, prehistoric, and antediluvian civilizations. And that statue of David you mentioned is looking directly at Rome, right?
Yeah, and the reason why David's eyes are staring and fixed at Rome is that was the headquarters of the Medici family.
Yeah, and the Medicis, again, so influential as a banking family. They were behind the major artists of the day. You know, as you mentioned, the Leonardo da Vinci's, the Michelangelo's, also the Niccolo Machiavelli's, even Cesare Borgia, you know, anybody who really had that power and influence they were connected to. And it's so beautiful, so fascinating that when you're in those parts, you still feel that culture today, the food, the music, the people, the fashion. It's just this imbued place with that sort of energy, right?
And somehow you feel home. This is really something what is the home of humanity, or I believe in that. A lot of people feel really home at these ancient places.
I completely agree. And many of you have had past lives in these places. When you look at the birth of the Renaissance period, what it gave to us with our art, our science, our literature, just everything, it's still giving back to us today. I mean, the ideals that many great countries have been born out of, and what I believe where we're going today, you know, we're sort of going through our own reawakening, and it'd be great if we could have another Renaissance period, but you know, we have seen so many great things come from there. And I want to thank you all for taking the time out to listen to our podcast again today, and I look forward to seeing you all a lot more. Zsuzsanna, did you have any words for everyone before we leave?
Of course. Grazie mille and arrivederci. Ciao.
Arrivederci. Ciao.